Hello there. Welcome into a Wednesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the new Extra Sports 1300 app for free, by the way, sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I'd love to get your thoughts on the day's topics. 719-247-1313. NBA trade deadline coming up tomorrow. I have an idea. See if you like it. For when it comes to the Denver Nuggets, of course. Big news for our local soccer club, Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC, that you may have already seen that news. If not, I will discuss coming up in just a little bit. And Sean Payton, what is it about Kay Adams that brings this side of Sean Payton out? Had some very interesting things to say when it comes to what his football team needs in order to become what he said a problem. Thinks the Broncos are going to be a problem next year. So we'll get into all of that. Let's start with the Avs. And there's not a whole lot to run through in terms of the game itself last night because the Avs scored none goals. Shut out by Vancouver 3-0, and all the good vibes from the last two games. Jared Bednar says it's playoff time. He's treating it like the playoffs. Avs come out, destroy St. Louis, dominate Philadelphia, and then go splat in Vancouver. Cale Makar with a theory.
There were sparks, I think. Shifts where we did, shifts where we just didn't. But the consistency right now is just not there, and that's been our fault. So, yeah, it's unfortunate.
The consistency has not been there. It's almost like it would be difficult to find that consistency when you have taken one of your main players and traded him in the middle of a season. This has very much to do with the trade of Mikko Rantanen. And you've seen it drag on early on that first weekend without him. You bring in Netchus, you bring in Drury, and it don't look quite right. Kind of looks like last night. But you extend the Avalanche a bit of grace considering that they were just blindsided, right? They were blindsided by the trade. They had no idea it was coming down. So you had to deal with the emotions of that, the emotions on top of that of losing somebody who has been right there with you every step of the way. And then you have to integrate two new players in the middle of a road trip. Yeah, probably wasn't going to look awesome right out of the gate. The results were probably going to be lacking, and they were. And then Jared Bednar makes his comments about treating it like the playoffs, and the Avs respond, and then a game like last night happens. And this is my biggest reason why I don't know that you should bet the farm on the Avalanche winning the Stanley Cup this year. These are seismic shifts within your organization on the fly, right? You don't get a training camp. They're going to have the Four Nations break, but half of their team is playing in it. It's going to be very difficult. You're repairing a plane or putting the plane together mid-flight. And I don't know what part of the plane Mikko Rantanen was, but it's very important to flying. And you're trying to do this on the fly. It's incredibly difficult. And so the consistency is not going to be there. And the question is, are they going to get it in time? With the idea that, hey, trade deadline's coming up for the NHL. And in terms of how good the Avalanche are, in order for you to look at this team and say, through the trade of Mikko Rantanen, maybe they are better, more talented, they have to make another move. And then you're going to have to integrate this new guy into the lineup. I don't see it all coming together this year with the caliber of teams that they have to go up against. Many of them they have played recently and not measured up to. Winnipeg, give them their flowers as perhaps the team to beat, or Edmonton. Either way, the Avs have not fared well against those two teams. And they're going to get another crack at Edmonton this weekend. They got the Calgary game in the middle, but they went up to Vancouver last night playing a Canucks team that has essentially given up on the season by trading JT Miller. And the Avs looked really good in the first period, nothing to show for it, and then it was like they quit pushing. Right? It was one of those, and we've seen the Avs in the past push through these kind of circumstances. Right? Avs come out flying in the first period. And I'll say this, continuing about Netchus, that dude's got to lead the league just from the week he's been with the Avs in hitting goalposts. I mean, that guy has incredible aim to repeatedly fire it off the post like he has been. But they were flying. They were looking good. And some key saves by Demko, some bad puck luck, hitting posts, things like that, which happens in hockey. You go into the dressing room, you're down 1-0. Okay. Come out with the same effort and you feel like you would be rewarded. But they didn't. It's almost like in the dressing room, instead of deciding, let's keep pushing, fellas, they came out and went, tonight's not our night. Second two periods were not good. And then you have them seemingly coming apart at the seams late in the game, where Miles Wood, for a second straight game, is acting a fool out there. In a game that's 2-0, yeah, you didn't feel great that the Avalanche were going to win the game, but mathematically they were still very much in it. You know what they say about 2-goal leads in hockey. You get one on the board, and now Vancouver's gripping the stick a little bit. But instead, Miles Wood carries out some kind of personal vendetta against the Vancouver Canucks. They take advantage. And I mean, at the very least, forget the, third goal that goes in. They controlled play after that. It has a lot to do with the trade, but it's just not the time. And Jared Bednar has talked about it. This is not the time. They have to get right. They have to be starting to play their best hockey. Stringing together wins. All of a sudden, they've left the door open. They could, if they don't beat Edmonton and Calgary beats them tomorrow night, the Avs could show up to work on Monday and be in a dead heat for the last playoff spot in the West. That's not how this was supposed to go. They're supposed to be hitting their stride. They're supposed to be taking down. You're not going to win every game. But you figured that results against better teams, they're just picking on the bad teams. That's not where they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be taking points away from Winnipeg, taking points away from Edmonton. Right now, they're leaving the door open for Calgary to pass them. And that's the last spot the Avs want to be in, is the last playoff spot. And I'm not trying to ring alarm bells to say, what if this Avalanche team misses the playoffs? I don't think they're missing the playoffs here. But from a team that's trying to figure out what they need to do to be a Stanley Cup contender, right? They go out and make the multiple trades to fortify the goaltending position. And by the way, Mackenzie Blackwood, I'm not talking about you, dude. You continue to give the Avs every opportunity to win a game. He has continued to be great. And once everything else gets figured out, this team can be really good. But that was supposed to be the move that kind of put everything in its place and away the Avalanche go. And they were starting to trend in that way. Then they pick up a couple of losses against other playoff teams. They trade Mikko Rantanen. Now they got to kind of cobble it back together. And what you see is a wildly inconsistent team, not just in terms of their production, but in terms of their effort level. They just didn't have it the second and third period. It was like Thatcher Demko broke their spirit. They need, I think, more than anything else, they need this Four Nations break. They need to recalibrate. Chris McFarland's got to make some calls and try to get a deal consummated to improve this hockey team, because they're not more talented than they were with Mikko Rantanen at the current moment in time. Some of the players that aren't participating in the Four Nations face-off need to get a break. And maybe that can be the thing with the impending return of Valeri Nichushkin, we think, on the backside of that Four Nations break. And then maybe that's where the Avs pick it up. But just as this team was trending in the right direction, you have this wrench thrown into everything with the Mikko Rantanen trade, and they haven't figured it out yet. Just plain simple period. They have not figured this out yet, how it's going to work with the two new additions. And this is a team that's supposed to be starting that crescendo towards the postseason. And I've been accused in the past of being an alarmist. Listen to Jared Bednar talk. Jared Bednar is feeling the urgency. Jared Bednar is saying, we got to get going here, boys. And they're just not responding. The ripple effects of this Mikko Rantanen trade were not going to be felt for a weekend, and then everything was going to be all good. So Calgary up next, who is better than Vancouver, and then you got the big one this weekend against Edmonton. Take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Just getting going with this Wednesday edition of the show. Coming up next, the NBA trade deadline is coming up tomorrow. Some big names that want to be moved, don't want to be moved, want to be moved, but don't want to go to a certain place. And I'm going to try and see if you would be willing to accept Kevin Durant onto the Denver Nuggets. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Big game coming up on Sunday. What are you going to be eating? What's the spread going to be looking like for Sunday? If you haven't really thought about it, may I suggest placing your pre-order with Hooters. Get 50 boneless wings for $79.99 or 50 bone-in wings for $89.99. And if you don't feel like hosting this year, you can also watch the game at Hooters on February 9th for a chance to win a custom engraved Hooters Colorado Solo stove. Make Hooters a part of your big game plans. Of course, this show is readily available on our social media platforms. And while you're watching the show, you can interact as Aaron has. Aaron, great to hear from you. Says Avs have quit on the season. And I would slightly amend what you're saying. Or clarify. I think the Avalanche front office may have quit, strong word, accepted their fate for this season. If I can add some colorful language to it. Chris McFarland had to know. Okay, whether I agree with him or not about the Mikko Rantanen trade. He's been doing this long enough. He understands the magnitude of what he was doing. Okay, and he has his hockey reasons. And I said, like, next year, we'll be able to better judge the move. Even after the trade deadline, okay, was that really the one Avs move, or did they add something else with this flexibility that I think they feel like they have by trading Mikko Rantanen? So I'm not out on the idea at all that the Avs can't ever get back to a Stanley Cup final. I'm just saying this year, you have to be realistic. What Chris McFarland did is unheard of. I know everybody is fixated on the Luka Doncic trade and how unheard of that is. What the Avs did until Luka came around was unheard of. The Oilers didn't give up Wayne Gretzky in the middle of a season. We have not seen a contending team unload a player of Mikko Rantanen's caliber midstream. We just have not seen it. Every trade that I have been able to find throughout NHL history is always really good player on bad team. Right? That's a natural thing to have happen. A contending team unloading one of the three best players for their team in the middle of the season, we haven't seen it. And going back to the Gretzky, in no way, shape, or form am I likening Mikko Rantanen to Wayne Gretzky. But the Oilers were a great team. And they decided watch the documentary if you want to know why the Oilers did what they did. But they did it in the offseason. And guess what? They had one of the worst seasons in years. Their head coach stepped down. Now, they got right the next year. And that could very well be the fate of the Colorado Avalanche. But when you make a deal like Chris McFarland made, you have to understand not just what's on a spreadsheet. You have to understand the human element to it, the chemistry aspect of it. I think he fully understood what he was doing. And he thinks truly it is what's best for the Colorado Avalanche moving forward. We shall see. But there's no doubt it is a huge blow to the chances of the Colorado Avalanche of competing for a Stanley Cup this year. And you're seeing it. So I'm not saying the Avs have given up. I think they like Marty Netschis. I think they like Jack Drury. I think they look around the room and we still have Devon Taves and Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon. We'll be fine. Like, I'm not saying that the Avs are like, to heck with this, we're done. But there's an acceptance of the reality for this season when you make a deal of this magnitude. And it's perfectly encapsulated with what you saw last night and what you have seen recently from the Colorado Avalanche. Inconsistency. Are they going to find that in time? Because they're not going to find it in the playoffs. They got to show it before the season's over. Are they going to find it after the Four Nations break? We'll see. But we're really in uncharted territory here with the deal of this magnitude happening in the middle of a season. And I can't help but draw a line between the decision that was made by Chris McFarland and the results, as inconsistent as they are, that we're seeing with the Avalanche right now. Take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. Trade deadline in the NBA coming up tomorrow. And the latest in the Jimmy Butler saga. So Jimmy Butler, as you know, really wants to go to Phoenix. And the Suns really want Jimmy Butler in Phoenix. The problem is they haven't really been able to figure out a way to get him to Phoenix. And now, by the way, everybody across the league knows that these two parties want to come together. And if you think this isn't the Lakers, right? The Lakers seem to be the franchise where at least one NBA team will fall over themselves to help facilitate the Lakers getting their next franchise star. The Suns aren't the Lakers. Nobody's going to help the Suns unless they get something out of it. So the latest rumor was that because the Warriors are desperate for a star, that the Warriors are trying to step in and say, hey, we'll help you, but we want Kevin Durant. We want KD back. So it would be a 3-team deal between Miami, Phoenix, and Golden State. Jimmy Butler would end up in Phoenix as he wants to. Kevin Durant would go to the Warriors as the Warriors want. And then Miami would have to get some combination of expiring contracts and young assets. That's what's kind of a mystery, is we don't know what Miami wants or who Miami thinks they are. So that's kind of the big question mark here. So everyone's trying to figure out on Trade Machine and on SportsCenter a way to finagle a deal where Jimmy Butler's in Phoenix, Kevin Durant is in Golden State, and Miami gets value in return. Well, now it's being reported this afternoon, Kevin Durant doesn't want to go back to Golden State. Now I'm editorializing from here on out, but essentially Kevin Durant said that chapter in my life is closed. I'm not going back. I took all this grief for going in the first place. And in my reputation and my legacy and everything was torn down by people. And now towards the end of my career, I'm going to end up back there in a trade. Kevin Durant he doesn't have a no trade clause, but certainly he'd have some input on all of this. It's like, yeah, you're not going to deal me to a place that I have left behind. I left Golden State. And Kevin Durant doesn't strike me as the sentimental type. So being able to be back with Steph and Draymond and whatever doesn't seem to me like would tug at the heartstrings of Kevin Durant. So I'm actually not that surprised that KD is like, reportedly, I don't want to go there. If the Nuggets are going to do anything significant, this is their chance. Jimmy Butler and the Suns desperately want to unite. Okay? Nobody's playing ball to allow the Suns to dump Bradley Beal, which would make things infinitely easier for them. Nobody wants to do it. We'll see if Milwaukee, with making the trade today for or giving up Chris Middleton for Kyle Kuzma, makes them more amenable to absorbing Bradley Beal's contract. But Beal has a no-trade clause. So he's a wrench in this whole thing. No one wants to take on Bradley Beal because everybody mocked the Phoenix Suns when they took on Bradley Beal. Why in the world would you do this? So here's the chance for the Nuggets. If they're going to do anything that we convene tomorrow and go, whoa, look at what the Nuggets did. To me, this is it. If you're Calvin Booth, you get on the group chat with Phoenix and with Miami and say, we'll step in for Golden State as this third team, and we want Kevin Durant. Nuggets get Durant. Heat get Michael Porter. Jimmy Butler goes to Phoenix. That's the framework. Now, can they make it all work with salaries and everything like that? It's going to be incredibly difficult, but it would be difficult for all of these teams that we've been hearing. And that's what makes the Luka trade so crazy. In addition to everything else, is the fact that it was so, there were quite a few assets that changed hands, but it star for star, it was like, that would kind of looked easy. This is going to be incredibly complicated financially. Right? But the premise of it is the Nuggets get Kevin Durant, Miami gets Porter, Suns get Jimmy Butler. Talked about yesterday, Michael Malone, we're not trading Michael Porter. Would he reconsider if Kevin Durant was the player coming in? At least begrudgingly, he would have to consider it, being okay with it. I don't even know if he can stop Calvin Booth from doing anything. But I got to imagine he'd at least be kind of amenable to the whole thing. Because I think that's the only thing out there. Right? For this team to get truly better. Because if they don't step in and do something like this, then it's going to be a lesser version of the Mikko Rantanen trade. You're going to trade a player that you've said time and time again is very important. He's a foundational player, and you're going to trade him for multiple players who aren't as good as him, and you're going to trot out there to the local media and fans and say, we think we got a better chance today to win a title this year than we did 24, 48 hours ago. You're not going to buy that. It would be the same thing as the Avs. We're taking a step back, probably, in order to make ourselves better moving forward. And you can agree with that sentiment or not, but that's essentially what trading Michael Porter would do. I don't see another deal out here where that is feasible, that the Nuggets get a better player than Michael Porter Jr. If they can make it work financially, this seems to be it. You pick up the phone, hey, here KD doesn't want to go to Golden State. Would he consider coming to Denver? And by the way, I know that Kevin Durant has a personal history with the Golden State Warriors. If KD was just looking at this from the standpoint of, I want to win as much as I possibly can, playing with Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon is a better opportunity than playing with Draymond and Steph. So if that's what this is about, I don't know what Kevin Durant wants. But to keep some hope alive for you Nuggets fans that are hoping that Calvin Booth does something and something that is actually worth talking about, this is it. KD doesn't want to go to the Warriors. Phoenix still absolutely wants Jimmy Butler for reasons that I cannot and will not understand, but they do. Get in there, be opportunistic, and get your top numbers cruncher on this thing. And it is going to destroy the Nuggets' depth, but let's be honest, how much is there to destroy? Jokic, Jamal, Gordon, KD, go for it and figure out the rest later. Would that be something that you would be amenable to? 719-24-7-1313. Coming up next, a significant day in the history of the Colorado Springs Switchbacks organization. couple of days ago, the Colorado Springs Switchbacks said there would be a big announcement today, and this afternoon they announced that Widener Apartment Homes, led by Dean Widener, Colorado Springs native, have now taken full ownership, or will take full ownership of Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC beginning this upcoming season. And Ed Reagan, who's the patriarch of the Reagan family, who brought in the Switchbacks, spearheaded the downtown stadium and all that kind of stuff, didn't point out like a specific reason why now was the right time. He just felt like it was the right time for him and his family to step aside and let somebody else take this franchise into the future. And what's going on right now with the league that the Switchbacks are in is not really any different than what you're seeing in the NBA, in the NFL, Major League Baseball. Every day that goes by, every year that goes by, sports become bigger and bigger business. It becomes more costly to do things. And this USL championship has some really big plans. And you've already been seeing it, right? They've invested in the women's game. They're getting more teams. They're relocating teams. You see teams that are investing in new stadiums. They have some very big things planned. And a promotion relegation model is certainly one of those things. To do all of this, I think this is just my read on it. I didn't even know what the press conference was about until I got there and sat down like everybody else. So I'm speaking from my opinion and following the league like I do. I'm not being told this by either the current ownership or the new ownership. There's going to be a lot of investment that has to be made. And we see it in every sport, that some of the longtime family owners of a team have relinquished control, sold to ownership groups, right? And the Dodgers are the preeminent one, right? They got like 8 ultra rich people that are just pouring money into that franchise to make it become what it is. And that's the way I think professional sports, in every sport at every level, the direction they're going. You're going to see less and less one singular owner of sports teams. It's going to be multiple because of the investment that needs to be made in order to continue to grow the leagues that they're in and the franchises that they're in charge of. And my read on it, listening to everybody today, that's what this is about. This is about further investment. This is about big, grand plans for the league, for the Switchbacks, for downtown Colorado Springs. And Widener Apartment Homes is the owner that they need at this point to take them to the next level. Now, the good thing is, because we've seen this with other professional teams, it's not like the Reagan family has just sold it to some outside entity, right? They had this bidding war, and somebody from clear across the country has purchased the team. Widener has been a minority owner in this team for years. right? They have been, I know the people who are going to sit on the Switchbacks board of directors, I know them. I've met them. I've talked with them. They've been around the team this whole time. And obviously they are a big reason why there is a downtown stadium. And you understand the development that's going on around the stadium is spearheaded by them. So it's not that this is an unknown entity that is taking over the Switchbacks. They have been integral in everything this franchise has done for years. Now they're just going to take full control of it. And whatever these grand plans are for downtown, for the franchise, for the league, they're going to be the ones with the capability of keeping the Switchbacks in line with all of that. I'll just say this on a personal note. It has been an absolute delight to have worked with the Reagan family for as long as I have. Ed, Nick, and James are just the best people. And to be able to follow along, and my broadcast partner, Roland Vargas, is even more well-versed and more ingrained with the club over the years than I've been. I'm a Johnny-come-lately compared to him and some of the other people who have been involved. But just in the time I've been involved covering the team, been calling games on TV for the team, now with our agreement, our partnership to bring Switchbacks games to you here on Extra Sports 1300, they have just been awesome to work with. And they're great people. And they deserve so much credit for the success of the club, not just on the field, but everything that has come about, right? As big developments and big changes to any city go, there are a lot of people complaining, a lot of people saying it wasn't going to work, a lot of people saying they'll never get it done. And they had a clear vision. They knew how to execute it, and they did. That stadium downtown would not be here. And I don't want to, go down a gloomy road, but I don't know what the fate of this organization would have been without the foresight and the desire and the drive to get that downtown stadium. And now everyone I talk to, I'm sure there's still some people on the east side of town that would really like the Switchbacks to be in their backyard. But all I hear, especially this year with the championship run, is how awesome Widener Field is and how it's become one of the places to go in the spring and the summer on a weekend. And the Reagans were integral in that. And from a soccer perspective, them bringing in Brendan Burke and James Chambers and Stephen Hogan when they did a few years ago to set them up, not just for immediate success, which they have, but sustained success. I mean, you look at it, Brendan Burke moves on. Stephen Hogan takes the reins as the head coach. The Switchbacks win, do really well. Then Stephen Hogan moves upstairs, so to speak, handles the player movement side of it. James Chambers moves one seat over, and we see it in other sports, how that's the biggest move you can make. And James Chambers takes the reins, and this team wins a title. And that all stems from, the Reagans bringing in that group of gentlemen to run the organization as they were getting ready to move downtown. So it's been a pleasure to work with the Reagans, and I hope that I see them all the time at Widener Field moving forward, and I bet I will. But I know some of the people with Widener, and they're dedicated, and they love the Switchbacks. They love what it means to the city of Colorado Springs, And I think that they're going to be good stewards of the franchise moving forward. And we'll see what kind of changes come here in the immediate future. Seems like this year is going to be about as business as usual as you could possibly expect. And James Chambers, Stephen Hogan, Alan McCann, they're all staying on. So I don't know that you'll even really notice a difference this season, and that's not a bad thing. They are the reigning champions, by the way, if it ain't broke. But then we'll see what happens year 2, 3, and beyond, what that all looks like. I heard the words top tier repeated a lot. And investment and things like that. There are more big plans in store for this club in the league that this club plays in. And I'm excited to be a part of it. I'm excited in my small way. I have no impact on any of it on a day-to-day basis, but I love riding alongside. So that was the big announcement today. If you hadn't seen it, and I'm sure a lot of you'll see it tonight on KKTV and moving forward. And hopefully get a chance here before too long to sit down with the people who are going to be taking the reins on the day-to-day and maybe having them on the show and talking more in depth about what the future looks like. But today was about celebrating this new chapter, but I think more importantly than that is celebrating what the Reagan family has done here. And they've done a tremendous amount. 719-247-1313. Switchbacks fans, take your thoughts on today's announcement. Get to a text here going back to the Avs, who have been kind of the big topic here in hour number 1. From the 719, couple things, Kaufman, Stanley Cup and the Avs are a relevant discussion, even with Rantanen. And your Avs aircraft analogy is kind of funny considering that it'll crash into the mountain. And after the Mikko Rantanen trade, it's funny that you bring that up because I have heard from more and more people that are saying the Avs weren't going to win a Stanley Cup anyway. That may very well be. And you know who I think believes that? Chris McFarland. If you think you have all the pieces required to win a Stanley Cup, you don't trade one of your most important pieces. You just don't. I don't care what his contract situation is going to look like in the future. So I don't think you're alone. And the guy making the deal a couple weeks ago, I think agrees with you. Now, where maybe you would disagree with him, maybe he does think in some form or fashion that the Avs can do it. I can't believe that he would. But I think clearly trading Mikko Rantanen signals, hey, we didn't have enough with him. And how are we going to get enough? Got to give up something. Not trading 29, not trading 8. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, Sean Payton says the Broncos are going to be a problem next year. Why would he say such a thing, and what does he need to actually be a problem next year in the AFC West? That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Wednesday. Ryan Kaufman with you. We are streaming the show live and in color on our social media platforms, Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. The handle is the same, at XTRA Sports 1300. And if you are doing your part to boost my self-esteem, which is directly tied to the number of followers I have on social media, you can watch the show live there as well. And I am just kind of dovetailing off of where we left off, talking about the announcement today that the Reagan family has sold the controlling interest in the Colorado Springs Switchbacks. They've transferred ownership to Widener Apartment Homes, who has been a minority owner in the team for years. And when I said that I know these people, I've spoken with these people, I am proud to say that one of your new board of directors for Switchbacks FC, Robert Carr, is a frequent listener of the program. And for that, I am super grateful. And he commented on the feed on Instagram that he would love to take me up on my offer to sit down and have a conversation about what the future of Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC is as Widener Apartment Home sees it. And I'm going to be bothering you very soon, Robert. So thank you for the offer. I'll be taking you up on it before you know it. Last time we checked in with Sean Payton, he was making some pretty bold statements about what he thought his football team had a chance to accomplish this season. This was him after they were not only eliminated, but blown out by Buffalo. Let's call it what it is. And he stood at the podium and said this.
There's a lot of confidence in this team. If we could get past that game, the next game we had to play, we felt real good about.
Which, of course, would have been a trip to Kansas City to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. It's a bold statement. Bold statement from a bold man. Well, Sean Payton is not done touting his team and their future. Today, he was on Kay Adams' show, and God bless Kay Adams for being able to get this kind of stuff out of Sean Payton, because she does every time. Last year, around this time, it was talking about wanting to fall in love with the quarterback, and they did in Bo Nix. Here's Sean Payton talking to Kay Adams about what he thinks of his Denver Broncos.
We're going to be, listen,
I know.
We're going to be a problem.
I know.
I will say this, just right off the top. I'm thinking about the time in which he joined Kay. I'm just wondering how Sean Payton sounds loosened up, doesn't he? You know, it's kind of freewheeling, like, you know what? I'm just going to say what's on my mind. Seems a little uninhibited sitting down and having this conversation, because I listened to the majority of it and I go, Sean's feeling pretty good. So the Denver Broncos are going to be a problem. As currently constructed? Well, maybe not. Here's Sean Payton. You know, he does the musts, the needs, and the wants. What is the must for the Denver Broncos to truly be the problem that he thinks they'll be in 2025?
I would say we need a joker.
You need a Reggie Bush.
An interior, and a joker now can be a tight end or a running back that has exceptional. We were spoiled here.
Yeah.
when you think about it, all right, you had Reggie, you had Jimmy Graham, Jeremy Shockey, Darren Sproles, Alvin Kamara. Those are interior, either tight ends or running backs.
Jokers.
That they have to be elite receivers that play tight end or running back. And then you get the matchups.
We're in search of a joker, which, as Sean Payton states there, is not a wide receiver. So press pause on your dreams of Chris Godwin or T. Higgins, or even mine of saying, man, Cooper Kupp would be exactly, I think, what the Broncos need. And that may be a more affordable price. A joker. So I perused the free agent list. I thought about what players may be available via trade. One doesn't exist. Right? You could already take out all the wide receivers. That's not going to fit the role. It's tight end and running backs. Mark Andrews. I like the idea of Mark Andrews on the Denver Broncos. Think he could be really good for him. He's not creating a matchup problem. He's just a sure-handed, and I know I say sure-handed, given where we last left Mark Andrews, that may be up for debate, but through the majority of his career, he has been sure-handed. He's non-joker. Think of the names that he brought up, Kamara and Graham and Bush, even Darren Sproles, kind of freakish athletes. He doesn't have control over this. As much as he'll try to convince you, like he convinced you that he baited, I forget now, was it Minnesota and Las Vegas? Was it half the league? Did he bait the Bears into taking Caleb Williams because they really wanted Bo Nix and he talked them out of it? These kind of stories tend to grow. The tales get taller as time goes on. He has no control over this. But when I hear Sean Payton speak, I hear Tyler Warren, Penn State tight end. That's what I hear. And that's not a new phenomenon. You and I have been talking about Tyler Warren being a dream scenario for the Denver Broncos for weeks now. Since they got to the national semifinal. And a wider audience was introduced to just how freakish Tyler Warren is. He would be that kind of a guy. And I've said the only way, because I don't think Sean Payton values the tight end, even when he's talking about Jimmy Graham, he's referring to him as a joker. Right? And I've said Sean Payton is not going to settle for tight end 2 with the 20th pick in the draft. There's just no way. Even after he took quarterback 5, I just don't believe that he values the tight end position to the point that he's willing to take a lesser tight end just to check that box. So Colston Loveland out of Michigan and whoever else, forget it. Not in the first round. But Tyler Warren fits that description. I don't even know, is Ashton Genty that kind of a guy? Could Ashton Genty be that? He did a lot of running at Boise State. Right? I have to look at his numbers. I don't know that the talk with Ashton Genty was what kind of an elite weapon he was in the passing game. I think if a joker is the thing that makes the Denver Broncos a quote-unquote problem, I don't know, maybe you have a name in mind at 719-247-1313. My list is one name long, and it's Tyler Warren, tight end from Penn State. I don't see him in the free agent market. I don't see a joker type that would be available via trade. I don't see one that may be cut at some point, and I don't see a lot of them in this draft. Maybe he's talking about Travis Hunter, although Travis Hunter's a wide receiver in corner, so probably not talking about him either. But he classified this as a need. Like that's the bigger story here, and we'll continue to, just like we did when he talked about how he wanted to fall in love with the quarterback, and I said that's Bo Nix. That's the quarterback he has a chance to fall in love with, outside of the obvious Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams, who had 0.0% chance of ending up in Denver. But I said Bo Nix is the quarterback he's going to fall in love with, and he did. And it still shocked me that he took him with the first-round pick. So we're going to do the same thing. The Broncos shopping list, at the very top of it, a joker. How many of those kind of players are reasonably available to the Denver Broncos? It's not many. And I don't think Tyler Warren's going to make it to 20. Because you think Sean Payton's the only guy? Like, he may have been on kind of an island with Bo Nix. He's not going to be with Tyler Warren. There are going to be a lot of teams that are in the Tyler Warren business. So if it's Tyler Warren, and look, and Sean Payton, said at the time when he was on with Kay Adams last year at the Super Bowl that he hadn't really watched the quarterbacks yet. I mean, I'm sure he was aware, and I'm sure he watches college football. So maybe he had an inkling that maybe that Bo Nix guy could be that, but he hadn't really gone in depth yet. Maybe when he does indeed dive into the film and starts talking with George Payton, maybe there is a second name in this draft that emerges. And we'll get deeper into the draft as we go on. But right now, it's like when the Titans said, we're not going to pass on a generational player. There's one. And he played in Boulder. And he plays both sides of the football. I would need convincing to say anybody else in this draft is a truly generational talent. It's the same thing with the Broncos in this idea of getting a joker. I see one of those guys. And I see the Denver Broncos in a spot that's going to be very difficult for them to get him. At least the way I think today that the board might fall. Would they be willing to trade up? I mean, to me, that seems like if that's the must, right? And Kay Adams brought up a veteran wide receiver. That's what we've all been saying. They need a veteran wide receiver. I just went on a whole thing yesterday about Cooper Kupp being that guy. So Kay Adams brought it up, and that's a need, I believe, is where he characterized it. So it's not that the Broncos are only going to go after a joker, but you want the top thing on the shopping list, it's a joker. And if that's the most important thing, if that's the one must that you have this offseason, that seems like something you'd be willing to do everything within your power to get. So sitting at 20, Tyler Warren looks unlikely. Moving up to the top 15? Maybe. 719-247-1313. Is there a player that you see can be that Joker role for Sean Payton. And then, of course, there was his earlier comment that I want to get into in the next segment, which is the idea that the Broncos are going to be a problem. Do you agree with that sentiment? That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Broncos want a joker. A lot of NFL teams would like a joker. Because obviously the premise of a joker is somebody who is more than what their position says they are. Right? Again, the names that were mentioned. Reggie Bush is a running back, but he brought so much else to the table. Jimmy Graham was listed as a tight end. Although, wasn't Jimmy Graham the one that challenged the franchise tag? He didn't want to be franchise tagged as a tight end and was like, look at all the different ways that I can be used. Look at how exceptional I am as an athlete compared to other people. I'm not this, big old road great blocker. I'm a wide receiver. I'm a bigger wide receiver. Yeah, I think that was Jimmy Graham that challenged the franchise tag all those years ago. But a lot of teams, maybe they don't label it, but a lot of teams would like the type of player that Sean Payton is looking for. And that's why I say Tyler Warren, it seems to me like the only guy right off the top that has that potential. But a lot of teams are going to look at Tyler Warren. Maybe they don't have a specific name for that position. They don't have a fancy name like Joker, but they look at Tyler Warren and dream of the different things they can do with him. And you saw some of it with James Franklin and Penn State during the college football playoff. The different places that they would line him up. So if this is the guy, Broncos got to get in line. I think it's going to be very difficult for the Denver Broncos. Not impossible. It'll, a matter of will. And Sean Payton seems like he has all the will in the world to make this thing happen. Seems like that's the missing piece of this football team. But it's going to take something. The Broncos can't just sit there at 20 and be like, he's going to fall into our lap. We don't have to do anything. It's going to take a lot more than manipulating one or two teams to have Tyler Warren fall to him. And I'm not playing revisionist history, and the Broncos absolutely ended up making the right call with Bo Nix. But you know who would be a perfect joker for the Denver Broncos? Brock Bowers. But priorities, right? Sean Payton has a list of priorities. Priority one was quarterback over joker, as much as he would love to have both. He chose one, and it turned out to be, through one season, the absolute right decision. Now they got to go find that, and they're just the coincidence that they had the ability to draft a player that is every bit what Tyler Warren could be, and then some in Brock Bowers. And because they got to keep the main thing, they took Bo Nix. So there is your big Broncos storyline of the offseason. Doesn't mean they won't do other things. But I think the classification of a veteran wide receiver being a need instead of a must, I think that goes back to what Greg Penner had said, that maybe they don't need to spend a lot of money this offseason like they did in year one when they were trying to completely revamp the offensive and defensive line. When I hear need, I feel like there's a price tag that they're willing to pay for a Godwin or a Higgins or even a Cooper Kupp. And if it goes $1 beyond that, they're like, we're out. On to plan B. But you see the priority list for Sean Payton coming into focus. And then there's this other comment.
We're
That
going to be,
face?
listen,
I know.
we're going to be a problem.
I know.
We're going to be a problem. This is perfectly in line with everything that Sean Payton has done from the minute he took the Broncos job. He did not come back into the NFL to do the slowest of builds, to keep his head down, push through, and just kind of gradually end up where he wants to be. No. He came back in, this is a guy with the Super Bowl already. And he's coming back and he's doing it his way. And he feels, and he's going to feel even more emboldened based on what happened this year for the Denver Broncos. And I understand. I understand. I did not think that the Denver Broncos would be even the 7th seed in the AFC. But you think that Sean Payton came in with some of these comments about, Nathaniel Hackett and these, just to kind of rally the troops. And then he was going to mind his P's and Q's after that. Did you? You didn't think that. No, now he has even more license to be bold, to make grand proclamations. But it's all about getting the Broncos back to relevancy, establishing a culture of that losing crap that happened before I got here. That's done with. We're taking shots at teams. We're calling out. Like we're in the middle of a ring on Monday Night Raw, and we're cutting a promo calling out The Rock. That's what Sean Payton's doing. He has no fear whatsoever of the Kansas City Chiefs, and he is utterly convinced that as soon as next year, you will see the Denver Broncos on top of the AFC West. He and I don't see eye to eye on that. And I think that there is another team that the Broncos would even have to leap over to get to Kansas City. But I understand why he says these things. This was a losing franchise, toiling in mediocrity, not relevant, just stacking up these wastes of a 16, 17 game season, just nothing gained, no progress made. And he's coming in here and saying it's the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. We're not satisfied being here. We're not even satisfied with the next step. I'm looking 2-3 steps down the road. And it's brash, but if you're a fan, you got to love it. If you're not a fan of the Denver Broncos, you think that he's out of his mind. But one thing, even though it seems like, especially with this Kay Adams interview that he did, it does seem like he's just kind of running his mouth. That's kind of the vibe I got. And he seems to, it's like NBA players with Taylor Rooks. And I'll let you draw your own conclusions on why this phenomenon happens. But the thing with Taylor Rooks is that, like, that's when Jaylen Brown said he'd be, how many championships did he say he'd win by the time he's 30? 6, 7? I don't know. He went all LeBron, not 1, not 2, not 5, not 9. But Sean Payton, when he's talking to Kay Adams or when he's talking to Diana Rossini, there are these, I'm forgetting the name of the guy for USA Today that he made the Nathaniel Hackett comments to. They're just people in the media or the stages that he steps onto where he's like, this is where I can make headlines. And it seems like he's just running his mouth. But at least what you have to grant Sean Payton is that he's not that emotional. He's not that spur of the moment. He's not that off the cuff. When he said what he said about Nathaniel Hackett, it wasn't so much just because he hates Nathaniel Hackett for some reason. It was to have Russell Wilson's back, to have his team's back. Right? Russell Wilson did not get the best coaching. Now he's going to. And we're going to find out how good Russell Wilson is. That was him backing up Russell Wilson and his team. This is the same thing. The comment that he made after the Buffalo game, that we felt confident about the next game. Right? That was a message to the fan base, but that was a message to the team. And it was calculated. He had time. He thought about it. This is all intentional. So it sounds like a guy that's just running off at the mouth. It's not. It's calculated. But the flip side of it, and I've said it every step of the way with some of these comments Sean Payton makes, and he wants this to happen, but the bar's been raised. He said that they felt confident they were going to go into Arrowhead and beat the Kansas City Chiefs and play in the AFC Championship. He said just this morning that they're going to be a problem. The Broncos have to win the AFC West next year. What other possible reality could there be for this team where you would look back at those comments and say, what wild card team is a problem? How foolish do you look saying you have a ton of confidence going into Arrowhead in the playoffs and beating Kansas City, and you don't even turn around and beat them out for the division next year? You know what Sean Payton's like? He's like an adrenaline junkie. That's what he is. And he does something. It gives him a rush. And he's like, I got to find the next rush. And the new rush is saying, Kansas City, we're coming for you. All these other teams don't know what I know. It's like he seeks that out, but there's a belief that he can do it. Right? Adrenaline junkies, I want to go climb a mountain. They believe they can actually climb a mountain. And they get the rush from it. With Sean Payton, he gets a rush from basically calling out the Kansas City Chiefs and saying, watch your back. But he legitimately believes that he and his team will back up his comments. And every step of the way, it's worked. Eventually, there will be a time where he picks a fight he can't win, where he writes a check that his team can't cash. And maybe this is it. But they've cashed every check that he has written so far. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on Sean Payton's comments. We're going to be a problem. And they must get a joker. More Drive Time Sports after this. for the Air Force Falcons. They've won back-to-back games. Huge win over Colorado State this weekend in Fort Collins, and they'll look to make it 3 straight conference wins tonight against San Jose State. Unfortunately, you will have to deal with me in order to listen to the game, but I hope you join me for it. 6 o'clock coverage begins, 6:30 tip-off from Clune Arena. So last hour, I mentioned that if the Nuggets are going to do anything significant, which I hate to immediately put this caveat on it. My prediction is that there's not going to be anything of significance and maybe nothing, period, that the Denver Nuggets do between now and the trade deadline. But an opportunity has possibly presented itself that I think can be somewhat of a happy medium between what Michael Malone wants, what Calvin Booth wants, what the ownership wants. And that is sliding into this 3-team deal with Miami on one side, Phoenix on the other. Kevin Durant today saying, or reportedly saying, that he doesn't want to go back to Golden State. So Golden State can't help facilitate this thing and get somebody significant back in return, possibly. This is where the Nuggets can fit in. And I don't know if they can get it done. I am an amateur capologist, and I spent more of my morning than I would care to admit trying to make the contracts work, which is the whole crux of the quicksand that the Nuggets are in right now. It's going to be very difficult. But if there's an opportunity that has presented itself for the Nuggets to do something significant, it would be to get in on this, try to get Jimmy Butler to Phoenix, and get Kevin Durant to Denver. And Michael Porter would then go to Miami. Now, a lot of other stuff would have to be involved, but I've seen all these reports from Brian Windhorst and others. If this deal goes down, it is going to be unbelievably complicated. There are going to be so many players that are moving teams, and 2 players from Team A are going to go to Team B, and 2 more are going to go to Team C, and Team C is going to send. It's going to be incredibly complicated, and maybe that's why this all will fall apart. But if you can, my point is that you can sell Kevin Durant for Michael Porter, essentially. I think you could sell Michael Malone on that idea. I think you could sell the team on that idea. And I think you could sell the fan base on that idea. But outside of this, I don't know what the opportunity is for the Denver Nuggets to do something that you're going to look at and say, okay, things have changed for the Denver Nuggets. How I feel about them one way or another has changed. But here's the part about all of this with Jimmy Butler and Kevin Durant that I just don't understand. And it has nothing to do with the Nuggets being a part of this or not being a part of this. Why, if you're Phoenix, would you be even willing to give up Kevin Durant in order to get Jimmy Butler? Is it the idea that Jimmy Butler wants to go to Phoenix so bad that you feel like, we'll forget everything else as long as we get him? Obviously, Devin Booker is untouchable. But this idea of, wow, Jimmy Butler really wants to play for us and just us. He'd only want to sign an extension here. We got to get this guy. And this is Matt Ishbia, the owner of the team, talking. And then James Jones, who has, I got to say, probably one of the least enviable general manager jobs in the league. He's got to go to him and say, hey, we might have to give up Kevin Durant. To me, that sounds insane. That Phoenix would be so willing to shake things up and to get this player that, for reasons that I cannot comprehend, only wants to go to Phoenix, which from where I'm standing is kind of a dumpster fire. Right? I mean, you like Kevin Durant as a player. You love Devin Booker as a player. They have no depth. They sacrificed it all to get Bradley Beal, which everybody saw from a mile away would be a terrible thing. They'd be too redundant in terms of the type of players they have. They haven't been able to figure out the depth part of their team. Yusuf Nurkic has gone down the tubes. Right? He's shot as a basketball player. Like, I don't know if he can be even a reclamation project somewhere else. They can't gain ground in the West. Lakers are doing their thing. Mavericks are doing their thing. You got these up-and-coming teams like San Antonio that makes a big deal. And Phoenix can't seem to gain any traction. They can't get any better. But why you think that the way to go is to give up Kevin Durant for Jimmy Butler? Now, if they can finagle it, and I'm sure it's what they would rather do, is offload Bradley Beal or just trade Bradley Beal to the Heat and get back Jimmy Butler. I know that their preference would be to have Kevin Durant and Jimmy Butler and Devin Booker on the team. But the fact that they at least, I shouldn't say fact, the rumor that they're at least willing to entertain the possibility that they would move forward with Jimmy Butler and not Kevin Durant is mind-numbingly dumb to me. I don't know if getting Jimmy Butler for Bradley Beal is getting the Phoenix Suns to where they want to go. But I know swapping out Kevin Durant for Jimmy Butler is not going to get them there either. I mean, you want to talk about an organization that wants to do things just to do things. May I present to you Exhibit A, the Phoenix Suns? That's almost the idea that they'd be willing to give up Kevin Durant is more inconceivable than how the Denver Nuggets make it work that they can essentially trade Michael Porter and get Kevin Durant. Like, I think it makes more sense that the Nuggets could get that deal done than it makes sense that the Phoenix Suns would want to partake in that. And again, taking the Nuggets even out of it again for a second, why they would be willing to give Kevin Durant to Golden State to facilitate this. And that's why I say it does look like the most logical outcome of this is to essentially trade Jimmy Butler for Kevin Durant. Again, Phoenix, what are you doing? But at least it gets Kevin Durant out of the conference. You're going to trade him to Golden State, and you're going to make Golden State a better team than you. And in my scenario where the Nuggets get in on all of this and get Kevin Durant, now it's a team that you can't beat, that you have made more unbeatable. They just seem to be so blinded by wanting to acquire Jimmy Butler, who to everybody else, he looks radioactive. He's intentionally missed team flights. He's left the arena when he found out he wasn't going to be in the starting lineup. He's been suspended multiple times. And the Phoenix Suns are like, we got to do everything we can to get this guy. It's a powerful feeling to be wanted, isn't it? I think that's what's behind this. The idea that there is a player that is a very good player that wants to come to Phoenix has just blinded Matt Ishbia and the Phoenix Suns so much that they'd be willing to actually make their team worse just in order to get somebody who wants to be there. And by the way, Kevin Durant wants, from everything I've seen, wants to be a Phoenix Sun. They have somebody. You want to talk about not being happy with what you got? Kevin Durant, who's a better player than Jimmy Butler, has seemed perfectly content in Phoenix. You know, when Kevin Durant wanted out of Brooklyn, I actually didn't want him on the Denver Nuggets because I saw a guy that was kind of a hired gun, always had a wandering eye, never settled, and he's gone to Phoenix. And with everything that's gone wrong in that organization and how little success they have had, I haven't heard a peep out of Kevin Durant being unhappy. So that's what makes me change my mind a little bit on the idea, obviously, a few years later, of the Nuggets getting Kevin Durant. He seems perfectly content. Doesn't seem to have the wandering eye. And of course, at his age, the power he would have over an organization is certainly less. And you just have to look at these rumors as evidence of that. You know, Kevin Durant can tell Phoenix that I don't want to go back to Golden State. But it really doesn't seem like Kevin Durant is being able to stop the Phoenix Suns' want to acquire Jimmy Butler and maybe sacrificing him in the process. So things have changed a little bit on the Kevin Durant front as opposed to what they were 2 years ago. And you also look at it, has less time remaining on his deal than Michael Porter Jr. And perhaps gives you some flexibility in what they do moving forward with Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon is a question for the offseason that can absolutely not be answered right now. It would be extremely complicated financially, and I get that it's admittedly fairly far-fetched, not because the fit would be bad or the Nuggets would never do it. It's more because of the financial situation the Nuggets find themselves in, and with the dearth of assets that they currently have, that makes it far-fetched. That makes it unlikely to happen. And I'll admit it's unlikely to happen. But if there is a desire within, and setting aside what Michael Malone said after the New Orleans game the other night about Michael Porter and being as emphatic as he was about it, he's not necessarily speaking for Calvin Booth. So if there is motivation within the Nuggets organization above Michael Malone to do something to answer De'Aaron Fox going to San Antonio and Luka going to LA, Anthony Davis going to Dallas. Or maybe you don't even look at it that way and you just look at it and say, wow, we're not better than Oklahoma City. We got to move the needle. This feels like the only thing that is even remotely possible for the Denver Nuggets to accomplish that goal. Everything else that I see as a possibility between now and the trade deadline is taking Michael Porter and trading him off for lesser players or dumping Dario Saric or Zeke Naji on another team and clearing the space that they would need to participate in the buyout market. But we'll see where things go. That's tomorrow. Nuggets, by the way, also in action tonight against the New Orleans Pelicans. That'll be it for me because I got to head up to the Air Force Academy. Hopefully I'll talk to you for Air Force women's basketball. If not, enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll reconvene tomorrow at 3 here on Extra Sports 1300.